On the clock, Tennessee Titans, they've got the number one pick in the draft. They obviously need a quarterback, but here's the problem. Um, I don't think Shedeur Sanders is going to want to play in Tennessee, and I do not believe that any other player should be taken number one. So for me, Shedeur is the best quarterback, and Tennessee can either not take him and go with Cam Ward at number one, or I think they can get some capital, still fall back and potentially get Cam Ward and get more capital later in the draft. I think that that's what they're going to do. So I don't generally do this, and it's going to be the only trade of the first round. I'm trading the first pick. I think Tennessee trades the first pick for a combination of reasons. And I believe that the Giants jump up to number one from 3-1, and the New York Football Giants are in the number one spot because they do have a great relationship with Shedeur Sanders. They have vetted him out several times. I believe that it is reciprocal there, and I think that the Giants move up to number one and take Shedeur Sanders with the number one pick in the NFL draft. Here's a little something about Shedeur. I think that if you really evaluate him as a quarterback and you take the name off the back of the jersey, if you don't look at who his head coach is, I think he's a clear number one quarterback. And here's the reason, is because Shedeur has this beautiful combination of the ability to be a prototypical passer from the pocket, and he's got the precise ability to be a surgeon in those cases, and he also has the ability to be an artist. And that combination doesn't come around a lot. Okay, his ability to create outside of the pocket, extend the play, is Fran Tarkington-esque. He's excellent in those situations. And if you give him some time in the pocket, which Colorado did not generally with their offensive line, but if he has time and he can diagnose what's going on, he is surgical from the pocket. I believe that he has a chance to be much better in the National Football League than he was even at Colorado, because let's face it, as Dion was trying to build the roster from a roster that won one game and make them immediately competitive, they got the skill position players right away, including Shedeur, but what they didn't have is a great offensive line. And as the offensive line got better, Shedeur's productivity went way up, obviously. And they had a really solid season this last year, but they were never great up front. If he can ever get in a position where he's playing on a like footing or similar footing with the opposition and an offensive line that can actually do something in front of them, then watch out. So I believe that he's actually just scratching the surface. I like him at number one, and I like the Giants going up there and trading for him with the number one pick. Okay, let's go to number two, Cleveland. Now, Cleveland could also go quarterback here, but let's face it, they're going to need to replace Myles Garrett, who has now recently requested that trade. And so there's a player that I think is the actual best player. If I were just making a big board, I believe Abdul Carter would be number one. And so I'm going to go Abdul Carter with the Cleveland Browns. He is a really great disruptive player on the edge, and he's only played on the edge, for a brief moment in terms of the totality of his career. He was an off-the-ball linebacker to begin with at Penn State, just moved down to the line of scrimmage basically full-time this last season for Tom Allen, their defensive coordinator, and all he did was go out there and, lead the country in tackles for loss. I believe that as he gets more comfortable at the line of scrimmage, he can have an impact that is similar to Micah Parsons. They won the same number at the same school in college. And this guy is really good. As twitchy as they come, he's athletic. He can sink back into coverage, which if you're watching YouTube, which you should, and subscribe, you're watching those highlights right now. He can do it all. And so with Cleveland needing to replace Myles Garrett, needing to get better on the defensive side. Yeah, they need to add offensive talent, and I think that they probably will. But the Browns, they were last in the NFL in scoring, and their defense probably, I wouldn't say is the absolute priority, but they've got the chance to get the best player in the draft right there at number two, and I'm going to take it. Now it's Tennessee at three, okay? After they flip those picks, Giants go up to number one. Now Tennessee at three. Again, this is going to be my last trade. But now Tennessee, and this is why they were able to do it, they get Cam Ward. So if they can't work something out with Shedeur Sanders, which again, I just don't think Shedeur Sanders is going to be willing to play in Tennessee with the history of what that organization has done from a quarterback position standpoint. And so Tennessee can either take Cam Ward with number 1 or go back to 3, still get Cam Ward and get draft capital. Well, to me, that's a no-brainer, okay? So that's why they're moving back. They take Cam Ward. I really like Cam Ward a lot. I think that this guy is a talented player. If Carter was on the board, I think that they would have to think long and hard. Tennessee was bottom 5 in sacks, but they need to get their quarterback. Will Levis just hasn't worked out the last couple of years. Cam Ward fits. He's on my board, the second best quarterback. I think that there's quite a drop after those top 2 guys, and you've got other teams sitting there like Las Vegas, like the Jets potentially, that are going to be needing quarterback help. So you've got to grab them there. I think from Tennessee's standpoint, they're just going to be hopeful that Cleveland does go Abdul Carter, which again, it just fits because of the Myles Garrett issue. So that's why they can get Cam Ward at number 3. Okay, number 4, the New England Patriots. Now, the future of the franchise is pretty clear with Drake May. I think that we can all, see that handwriting on the wall. They've got to get better protecting him. The Pats allowed the 5th most sacks in the league, so I'm going to go offensive line here. I think it's tempting to go Travis Hunter. He's still on the board here. It's tempting to go Travis Hunter because they can address the corner issue and the wide receiver issue with one player. However, I think you're going to go first principles here and try to get better at the line of scrimmage. What did we see, by the way, in the College National Championship and playoffs, and what did we see in the Super Bowl? You better be able to protect your quarterback. And so if you're going to give the keys to the castle to Drake May, you better be able to protect him. I'm going offensive tackle from LSU, Will Campbell. So Will Campbell, it might not be the sexiest pick, but it's a really solid pick. And I've got Campbell at 4 to the New England Patriots. Again, they're going to have to pass on Travis Hunter right there, and the next team is going to be really glad that they did, and that's Jacksonville. So Jacksonville is sitting here. They were last in the league in passing defense and takeaways last year. They only had 9 takeaways in 17 games. They get the best ball-hawking cornerback in the country, and Travis Hunter right here. Travis Hunter to the Jacksonville Jaguars. New head coach Liam Cohen. He was the OC of the Bucs the last couple of years. He compared Travis Hunter with Brian Thomas on the offensive side, and then you're starting to ask yourself, like, well, hold on, Joel. You keep talking about him on both sides of the ball. That's exactly right. I am talking about him on both sides of the ball because I believe that Travis Hunter will play both sides in the National Football League, and I think he can. I actually don't think it's that hard. I really don't. For him, think about it from this perspective. He played over 125 snaps a game and won the Heisman Trophy and was a dominant force on both sides of the ball in college. He played almost every snap on the offensive side. He doesn't have to do that in the NFL. And primarily because I don't believe he is a true number 1 wide receiver or really even a true number 2 wide receiver in the National Football League. His size, stature, and quickness, more importantly, I think lend him to being more of a slot player, get his hands on the ball in creative ways, which means that his snaps get limited from, let's say, 60 to 35 just based on game situation and personnel grouping. Okay? I'm going to have, by the way, a big understanding football about personnel grouping so that you understand more about what I'm talking about. So make sure to go subscribe to the YouTube and check out that understanding football. But Hunter's snaps will be limited offensively just because of his role, which means he can be the starting cornerback and play the whole game on defense and then be a number 3 wide receiver on the offensive side. And now you truly are, if you're Jacksonville, getting 2 players in 1. I think that he can grab 40 to 50 catches in the National Football League, maybe 30 to 40 catches in the National Football League while being a true shutdown corner. His instincts on the defensive side are rare. I think his value is greater as a corner. He has the potential to be a top 2, 3 corner in the National Football League, whereas he can be a very good number 3 wide receiver. I don't think he's ever going to be a top 2, 3, 4 wide receiver in the National Football League, mostly based on physical stature. But if you can tell me you're going to give me an elite corner and a guy that's going to certainly help on the offensive side, I'm going to take that. So the Jaguars get Travis Hunter right there at number 5. All right, so then Vegas is up, and Pete Carroll, their new head coach, Chip Kelly, their new offensive coordinator. I think that they could possibly try to move up for a quarterback. We'll see, how much my colleague has an influence on their draft, Mr. Brady, but I go back to this a lot. If you see coaches that have success a certain way, they generally try to go back and follow that blueprint. Okay. So, what did Pete Carroll have success with? Defense. Defense. Pete Carroll in the NFL found his quarterback in the middle of the draft in Russell Wilson and built his team around running the football with Marshawn Lynch, although they didn't inside the 1 yard line, which was crazy, and defense. Okay. And there's a guy that just screams Pete Carroll defense to me on the board right here, and that's Will Johnson, the corner from Michigan. Will Johnson has great length. You know, he reminds me a lot of Richard Sherman. I think he's great in zone. Pete liked to play a lot of zone, at least in his past, with post-safety defense. Again, subscribe to YouTube. Go over to Understanding Football. You're going to know all the terms that I throw out in all of these episodes. Will Johnson is a shutdown corner. He's got great ball skills. He's great in zone. He can play man. He's very smart. He's physical. He likes to rally up and make tackles in the run game. He screams Pete Carroll to me. I think that fits a lot. He's 6'2", 200 pounds. And if Brady is involved at all, then Tom Brady gets a Michigan man in his first draft. It works. Listen, it works. So let's go to the Jets. I think that the Jets would love to get a quarterback. I don't think that they've got the capital to move all the way up there because, again, Tennessee is not going to be moving around too much. They're not going to move past 3. They need a quarterback. New York definitely needs a quarterback, at least in my estimation. And so the 2 quarterbacks that you would take in this spot are off the board, and I don't think you're going to reach on another one. So what do they do? What do the Jets do? Well, Aaron Glenn is a defensive guy. He's your new head coach. What have we seen in college football? What have we seen in the National Football League about what wins at the top? You better control the line of scrimmage, okay? We can talk about all these other pieces all we want, but man, you better control the line of scrimmage. And the Jets have the opportunity to select what I believe to be the most disruptive defensive player outside of Abdul Carter, of course, different positions, but Mason Graham, the defensive tackle from Michigan. This guy's tape is unreal. It's exceptional. He is a block destructor. He's quick. He rushes the quarterback. He stops the run. He does it all. He does it all. He's the best defensive tackle in the draft, and I believe that the Jets would get much better defensively if they got Mason Graham. How much does a great pass rush help your secondary? Let's just look at what the Eagles did to the Kansas City Chiefs in the Super Bowl. All right, it's very clear. You look at what Michigan has built themselves on. It's being great on the defensive side. He was a huge part, if not the main part of a defense that went 15-0 and won a national championship a couple of years ago. I really love Mason Graham. I think that he fits perfectly for a team that might be trying to rebuild their identity, and Mason Graham goes to the Jets. Okay, Carolina at number 8. This is when you can kind of start to go a little bit quicker because I think people are going to be trying to move down. Maybe there's not the great value right here, but they're not going to have trade partners. So they're going to be taking, and they're going to be taking for need, best available, all of it. Okay, so Bryce Young, he had a nice finish to the season. They need some help on the defensive side. Worst scoring defense in the league last year. Specifically, they need help on the edge. They only had bottom 5 in sacks? Bottom 5 in sacks is not going to get it done in this league. I like Jalen Walker, the linebacker outside player for Georgia. Okay, Walker is a do-it-all linebacker. He can play inside. He can make tackles. He can move to the edge. He can be explosive as a pass rusher. So Jalen Walker to Carolina, I think that fits really well right there. Let's go to number 9, New Orleans. They've got what we think is, needs in a lot of places. Kellen Moore has been looking across the field as the offensive coordinator in Philly this year, and he's seen a guy that just dominated the Super Bowl. He's got to play against him in practice, and Josh Sweat, 6'5", 265 pounds. Okay. Now, Kellen Moore comes over from Philadelphia, where they just made a living drafting Georgia defensive players. And lo and behold, here's Michael Williams, an edge player from Georgia who's 6'5", 265, almost identical to Josh Sweat. And even though he dealt with some injuries when he was healthy, he showed the ability to be dominant, in particular in those 2 Texas matchups, 4 sacks in each of those 2 games. Not each of those, 4 sacks total in those 2 games. And again, that Eagles blueprint of drafting Georgia defenders, look at what ultimately paid off, a Super Bowl championship up there. Kellen Moore comes down to New Orleans. I think he takes Mykel Williams. That goes to number 10 now, and now the Bears are on the clock. Man, how different the Bears season would have been. Think about that Hail Mary between the Commanders and the Bears. As painful as that is for the Bears fans and amazing that is for the Commanders, like the deflection point of where the seasons went from there from each team is so drastic. So drastic. Chicago needs help a lot of places. Ben Johnson comes in from Detroit to be their head coach. One specific reason: get the best out of Caleb Williams. I don't believe you do that through skill position players. I believe you do that through the offensive line. Remember, last year they had a chance. They had a chance to draft a tackle like Olu Fashanu or Taliese Fuaga. They passed on that. They went Rome Odunze. Okay, fine. You know what? I love Rome Odunze as much as the next guy. But now you can't pass on an offensive lineman this year. So I like offensive lineman from Alabama, Tyler Booker. Might not be the sexiest pick again, but you've got to get Caleb Williams some help in front of him. He was sacked 68 times last season. That's the third most in history. How about an offensive lineman? Chicago? I think that's an easy pick right there. I think that Booker is likely more of an interior guy, but just taking someone that can play on the offensive line and do it well is an upgrade.
Thank you for watching the Joel Klatt Show YouTube channel. And if you liked this clip, make sure to like it and subscribe to the channel, and you can stay up to date on all of my college football coverage.